Hello, so welcome to the next square of the 50 Stitches Crochet Along, and this week we're making the Celtic Weave stitch. So it's a beautiful stitch that looks like you've just weaved layers through. It's a type of cable stitch. Okay. So it's single-sided. So how do we make it? So for this square we're going to be using a 4mm hook, and we're going to start by chaining 32. So in the fourth chain from your hook you're going to make a double crochet and then double crochet in each chain across. So remember that turning chain counts as your first stitch, so you should have 30 stitches by the end. Okay, so get to the end of that row, you're going to turn and chain one, and then make the alternate turning chain in the first stitch. Just pop the stitch marker in there. Okay, so now we're going to start our cables. Okay, so we're going to skip the next two stitches, and in the post of the stitch after that we're going to make a front post treble. So wrap the yarn around your hook twice, through the post from right to left, and make a treble. So yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then do the same for the next stitch as well. 2, 2 and 2. Now we're going to go back to those 2 skip stitches, and we're going to make front post trebles in those as well. So we're going to start with the second stitch in the row, and then we'll go to the third one. So it's exactly the same, it's just that we're working backwards. So I find it easier to turn everything on its side to do these. Okay, so that's number 1. And everything does feel like it's getting tangled with these first rows. It'll get easier as we go. So my next skip stitch is this one here. It's folded over, so you can have to look for it a little bit, but it is there. I've gone through the right part. There we go. So you kind of have to unfold it as you go, but these first rows are the hardest. It'll get easier as we go along, because the more you make, the more it straightens itself out. So you can't really see the pattern yet. So don't worry about that, it will come through. The hardest part really is to make sure you're keeping things the right way up. So there's the bottom of my foundation chain. That's the top of the first row. As long as you keep track of that, you'll be just fine. So now, those 2 stitches are our first front post trebles that I made. So those are the next 2 front post trebles. We're just going to skip those 2 and go to the next 2. There we go. That's what we're doing. So the pattern for this row is you skip 2 stitches, then make 2 front post trebles, go back to your skip stitches, make 2 front post trebles, then go back over, ignore the front post trebles you've already done, skip the next 2 stitches, and then make 2 front post trebles. You go back. So now I've done those 2, we go back to the ones we skipped. You always go to the one furthest away from where you're working first, and then make the next one. It's not going through the right place. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Yarn over twice, and the next stitch is there. So sometimes just go digging for your stitches, but Just trust the pattern and it will all come right. Okay. So yeah, right now it looks a mess. It comes through in later rows, I promise. So now those are the 2 front posts we made before. I'm going to skip those, skip the next 2 unworked stitches and go to the next 2. Okay, so I'm at the end of the row and I've made my last 2 stitches there in the skip stitches, and then the very last stitch of the row is going to be on top of that turning chain, and you're just going to make a double crochet. So just normal double crochet through the loops. Just take that out. Then you turn, chain 1 and make the alternate turning chain in that first stitch. Oops, there you go. Just pop that back in there. Okay, so this next row is all back post trebles, and it is the awkward row. There's an awkward stitch to get in here. Okay, so when we're counting our stitches, we count them in the order they appear at the top. Don't worry about the order they appear when you look at it from here. It's all about how they appear on the top of your row. So we're going to back post treble in our first 2 stitches here, which are those that went into those skip stitches at the end of the first row. So look around the back like that, pull through, and then make your treble. And we do the same in the next stitch as well. I'm going to skip these 2, we're going to come back to these later and make a back post treble in these. So all the first set of back post trebles after you skip 2 stitches will be in these diagonal ones here. Okay, and then when we go back to the skip stitches, you're going to work in the ones that are behind these. Okay, so back post around these 2. So these are the nice easy back post trebles. The awkward ones are the ones where we go back to the skip stitches. Right, done that, so let's go back to these 2 here. Now to get around the back post, it can be a bit like, right, it's easiest to do if you turn it to the front, because we need to work over the top of here, we can't go around the back, so you need to get under those 2 at the front and get round the posts from the front side and then make your treble. It can be awkward to find that stitch and to get positioned. Like that. Okay, so I pull it around the front. You can see it's being worked over the top, when it pulls over the top of these at the front. So we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, which are these 2 here. No, those 2 there, and go around the front of the next diagonals. It's much easier to do this by kind of eyeballing where things are going than trying to follow the pattern, which I know makes no sense, but it can be difficult to see where your stitches are. So we need to go back to the next skip stitches, which are these ones here. So again, it's easier to try and get to them from the front. So I need to go under there. That's the first skip stitch, and the second one, which is what we need to get to next, is under there. So remember, your hook needs to go from right to left if you're looking at it this way. Pull round. And the same for the next stitch, which is easier to get to. So you're almost working at it from the front and doing a front post. So if I just bring that round, you can see that weave is now starting to happen. So our back posts that are awkward to get to are being worked, so they're lying over the top of these other stitches. Okay, and that weaving pattern is now coming in. Ooh. I know this is an awkward one. This is probably the most difficult stitch we have in the entire cowl. So now we need to skip 2 stitches, which are here, and our next 2 back post trebles will be made around these ones here at the front. If I turn it around you can see better. So these ones that we made that are sitting on the front, this is where we're making our next set of back post trebles. I've done my last 2 skip stitches there, and you'll see there's no more diagonal stitches, and so your last 2 back post trebles are going to go straight into these 2 here, which are a bit easier. So it feels like you're out of sequence, but this is absolutely fine. So last 2 back post trebles in those last 2 front posts, and then the final stitch of the row is just a normal double crochet. Okay, so that is row 3, and that is by far the most fiddly row. Okay, there we go. So if you're measuring your square to see if it's the right length, measure it after row 3, because after this it really does feel like it's kind of sucked itself in. Okay, so for the next row we're going to repeat row 2. So I'll just start that to show you how it fits in. So chain 1, and then in the first stitch you make the alternate turning chain. And we're going to repeat row 2 with the front posts. Okay, so like the front row, you're going to skip the first 2 stitches, go into the next 2, and front post treble in both of those. Then go back to your skip 2. You always go to the one furthest away, and front post treble around both of these. And you can see everything's starting to weave over. Okay, so for the square you repeat rows 2 and 3 all the way up. There are 15 rows in total for this square. Okay. And for the border you need to go down to a 3.5mm hook, because this just contracts, so for the border it's a 3.5mm. So 15 rows in total, which makes the border nice and easy. So it's 1 single crochet in each stitch across the top. Okay. Make sure you go in order that they appear kind of when you're looking at it down rather than from the front. Okay. Same across the bottom, single crochet in each row. For the sides you make 2 single crochet in each row, and then add the extra stitch in the corners for the turn. So as always, if you need any help, please do come into the Facebook group. I know this is a difficult stitch, so if you do need any extra help with, please do come ask. And come and show us your finished squares as well. So thank you for joining me, and I shall see you next time for the next stitch. Bye for now.